Hello everyone. Today we're going to look at 5 of the biggest misconceptions that tourists have about Japan before they arrive for the first time. We'll probably follow this up with another video focusing on misconceptions about actually living in Japan, but first let's get started with this one. But before we start, just a quick reminder that if you like this video or like interesting and sometimes humorous things about Japan from someone who actually lives here, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel's info to anyone you think might be interested. It really helps. Okay, back to the video. Firstly, let's get something obvious, which we won't count on our list, out of the way. Most people already know this, or at least think they do, but it's still worth noting. Not everyone in Japan speaks English. Or, let's correct that, almost no one in Japan will try and speak more than the most basic English with you, so be prepared. But have no fear. Yes, you'll hear arigato and maybe hello in tourist areas, but outside of major cities and famous tourist traps, English usage drops off quickly. And yet, Japan still functions remarkably well for visitors. If you rent a car, highway signs and navigation systems for rental cars almost always have English. Informational signs, while their English might not be technically correct, are usually easy to follow. And with modern translation apps on your phone, you should be able to get your points across. So keep this language point in mind as we move on. Misconception number 1. Japan is extremely expensive. For many tourists, Japan has this reputation of being one of the most expensive countries in the world. Luxury hotels, $300 pieces of fruit, high-end Michelin-starred restaurants. It's the image that sticks in many people's minds, especially in these social media influencer days. But here's the reality. Japan can be expensive, if you try making it expensive. Do you like staying at high-end hotels? Eating the top Wagyu beef? Traveling in first class? Sure, it can be as expensive as you want it to be. But for the everyday tourists, including those traveling on a budget, it's often surprisingly affordable depending on how flexible you are. For example, you can eat a wide variety of full and delicious Japanese meals for under 1,000 yen, all in. Outside of Tokyo or currently trending on social media shops, a bowl of delicious ramen might cost you 700 to 800 yen. A beef bowl from gyudon chains like Sukiya or Yoshinoya is even cheaper. Love sushi? Kaiten sushi chains are ridiculously inexpensive depending on what kind of sushi you like to order. Even if you are missing your dose of fast food from home, McDonald's, it's much cheaper in Japan than in Western countries. In a rush or don't want to go to a restaurant? Convenience stores, or konbini, are everywhere, and they don't just have snacks. They have almost everything you could possibly need. Real meals, fresh food, coffee, ATMs, concert and event tickets, alcohol, even printers and copiers. Likewise, transportation looks expensive on paper, and if you insist on the fastest routes, it can be. But the systems here are precise, clean, and reliable. And when you factor in this quality, safety, and efficiency, the value is hard to ignore. Most cities have some kind of day pass you can use to use local transportation instead of the regular pay-as-you-go system. The Shinkansen, or bullet train, is very expensive these days as the once affordable JR Pass has become not really so affordable. But it's usually the fastest and most unique travel experience you can have in Japan. Sometimes, with the right planning, traveling by air might be a better alternative if the distances are far, so check into it. Regular trains, highway buses, night buses, and even ferries also often offer cheaper alternative rates for traveling, if you're into that style of traveling. No night buses for me, please. Along the same lines, places to stay in Japan run the gamut from super cheap hostels to some of the best 5-star experiences in the world. For lodging, you really get what you pay for, so it's up to you. The one good thing about lodging in Japan is that regardless of the price, you generally don't need to worry about security or safety or cleanliness about most of the places to stay. Now, I have to admit that I've never stayed at hostels in Japan, so that's just what I hear from others, but the reality for the cheapest accommodation catering to foreign tourists might be a little different than what I'm talking about. Tell us what you think in the comments below if I'm off base with this, and if you've tried hostels here. One side note to note, first-time tourists often hear of the joys of Japanese ryokan or hot spring hotels. And believe me, they are one of the best experiences you can have when you visit. But real ones are not cheap, especially if you plan on staying overnight in a hot spring resort hotel. They usually include 2 top-notch Japanese meals, spacious rooms, beautiful views, and relaxing hot springs, but you will be paying a premium per-person charge for these rooms, and not a flat rate per room. Prices probably range anywhere from 20,000 yen and up per person, so save up and budget for a nice night at one of these. In my opinion, it will be one of your best experiences in Japan. The general misconception of Japan as expensive comes from comparing Japan to budget backpacking countries in parts of Europe and less developed countries. But compared to major Western countries, Japan often holds its own, or beats them pricing-wise. Again, you can spend as much or as little as you want on your trip to Japan. Just plan and be prepared. Misconception number 2. Japan is just Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. For many tourists, Japan exists as a triangle: Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. And while those cities are incredible, they are not Japan. Japan is made up of dozens of regions, each with their own dialects, food, customs, history, and pace of life. Step outside the major cities, and you'll quickly notice how much quieter and more personal Japan becomes. Rural towns where the trains come twice an hour, mountain villages where neighbors still greet each other with "Ohayo gozaimasu," coastal areas where life revolves around fishing seasons instead of office schedules. If you've lived in Japan long enough, you realize the country doesn't have one personality. Tokyo alone contains multiple worlds. You can easily stay a whole week exploring the city and the immediate surrounding areas, but then you just experience Tokyo, not Japan. Beyond the famous tourist destinations, there's an entirely different Japan that most tourists never see. Get away from the crowds, rent a car, visit the Japan that most visitors never see. I've made quite a few videos about some of the off-the-beaten-path places to visit in Japan, so check them out if you're interested. And let me know if you have a favorite place in Japan outside of the crowds of the big 3 cities. Misconception 3. Japan is all about anime, manga, and pop culture. Anime and manga are real, and for a certain segment of Japanese society, they are important. And yes, places like Akihabara do exist. But tourists are often surprised by how little they encounter these things in daily life here. There are not people cosplaying all over the place in Japan. Most Japanese people aren't walking around discussing the latest anime episode. They're commuting, working overtime, picking up groceries, and living structured, routine lives. The image many tourists have for manga and anime is that everywhere in Japan is colorful, chaotic, or playful. The reality is often quiet, orderly, and serious. And did I mention crowded in the biggest cities? You'll hear words like shigoto far more often than anime, and you'll see suits, not costumes, offices, and not arcades. That doesn't mean Japan lacks fun things to do or fantasy worlds or cool pop art. It just means pop culture is a layer of Japanese society and not the foundation. Understanding this difference can help you appreciate Japan as a real, lived-in place, and not just a fantasy world. Misconception number 4. You can just wing it in Japan. Japan looks easy on the surface. Trains run on time, everything feels organized. So many tourists assume they can just show up and figure it out as they go. Sometimes that works. Often it doesn't, especially if you have many things on your to-do list in Japan. Japan runs on systems, reservations, rules, timing. Miss a train by 30 seconds and it's gone. And while the next train, at least in the urban centers, won't be too long behind, you could be wasting valuable time. Show up late to a hotel reservation and it may be cancelled without discussion. This largely depends on the level of hotel you're staying at, but it's a good rule of thumb to send the hotel a message if you're going to check in late. And arrive without planning where you will stay, especially during peak seasons, and you'll often hear, "muri desu." That's not possible. Make your hotel reservations in advance. It'll save you a lot of headache. In big cities, you might be able to find alternative lodging, but you will be wasting valuable time and causing yourself unnecessary stress. Booking apps are, in my opinion, very easy to use these days and reliable for your hotel stays in Japan. Even restaurants, especially good ones, may require booking days or weeks in advance. If you are flexible on the times you want to eat, it shouldn't be a problem except for the hottest spots on social media, which I personally would avoid, as Japan is filled with delicious food everywhere. If you're a newbie to Japanese food, the large chain restaurants often have great value and taste, and they can be found everywhere. Some of my personal favorites are any of the kaiten sushi chains like Kura or Sushiro or Hama, Koko Ichibanya for great customizable Japanese curry, Washoku Sato for a wide variety of Japanese dishes, the aforementioned gyudon or beef bowl joints like Sukiya and Yoshinoya, almost any ramen shop, family-style restaurants and cafes like Gusto, which have some of the best and most affordable karage or Japanese fried chicken, in my opinion, and even Japanese pasta and Italian places, though I would stick with their pasta dishes and stay away from their version of pizza, which is not really good. Many like the Saizeria chain, which are everywhere, but I prefer Jolly Pasta, so look for them instead. And if you prefer udon noodles to ramen, Marugame Seimen shops are everywhere. Izakayas are very fun and usually have a wide variety of foods, and are an essential experience if you like drinking, but they can get a bit pricey compared to the aforementioned food chains. If you really want to check out reviews, I recommend the Japanese site Tabelog instead of the primarily English review sites. Just use your translation app as necessary. Booking things and making reservations don't make Japan rigid or unwelcoming, it just means spontaneity works differently here. Once you understand the rhythm, everything flows relatively easily. But assuming Japan operates like other travel destinations can turn simple days into stressful ones. Misconception number 5. Japanese food is just sushi and ramen. Sushi and ramen are famous for a reason, but they're only the beginning. Most Japanese people don't eat sushi regularly. It's more of a special occasion food. What they eat daily is much simpler and more varied. Grilled fish, rice, miso soup, seasonal vegetables, noodles like udon and soba, and regional dishes you won't find outside of Japan. Every area has its own specialties, its flavors, and its own pride, so try and check them out. Food in Japan is deeply connected to seasonality. Menus change, ingredients rotate, and what you eat in winter isn't what you necessarily eat in summer. Tourists often chase famous foods and chains, as is outlined previously, which are all great, but living here teaches you that Japan's real culinary magic is in the ordinary meals, quietly eaten day after day. While they might be intimidating because of lack of English menus, try checking out local mom-and-pop shops and restaurants to try more regional and seasonal delicacies, and you might just find something you've never tried before. So, those are 5 of the biggest misconceptions tourists tend to have about Japan before they get here for the first time. None of these things are meant to scare you off, and none of them mean Japan is hard to travel in. Honestly, Japan is one of the easiest countries in the world to visit once you understand how things work. It's safe, it's clean, it's efficient, and most of the time, things just work. But Japan does have its own rhythm. Some things are cheaper than you expect, some things are more expensive. Some places are crowded beyond belief, and others feel like you've stepped back in time. Some days you'll be eating incredible food for a few hundred yen, and others you'll wonder how an entire meal disappeared in 5 minutes. The biggest thing, I think, is not to come in with a single image of what Japan should be like. The more flexible you are, the more willing you are to adjust your expectations a bit, the better your experience is going to be. If you've already been to Japan, feel free to let people know in the comments what surprised you the most on your first trip. And if you're planning your first visit, hopefully this gave you a more realistic picture of what to expect, and maybe helped you avoid a bit of unnecessary stress. In the future, like I mentioned at the start, I'll probably talk about misconceptions about actually living in Japan, which is a whole different story. So if that sounds interesting, make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.